I like to use the sugar-free jelly every once in a while. You don't want to abuse anything. We don't want to use anything in complete excess. But if it can be a tool that we can lean on and it can make us better, why not use it?
I'm at a point where I notice a big difference in the quality of food that I buy. So if I eat a lot of processed foods or foods that are sprayed or low quality foods, my recovery and joints feel a little worse.
We've pulled my protein down almost in half. In doing so, I've saw digestion get massively better. I think my waist has come in.
A lot of times when guys are dieting, sometimes they have trouble sleeping. A lot of times that can be due to being very, very depleted, right? So what I find often, adding 10 to 15 grams of honey to the last meal before bed can oftentimes help replenish that liver glycogen and actually induce a little bit of a better sleep.
What's up, Muscle and Strength? We are here at the best grocery store in Texas. Me and my man Ben are on the Hosstile team here. We're gonna give you a perspective on grocery shopping from a pro bodybuilder's perspective, getting ready for the Olympia, and a pro level coach and what he's doing with his athletes. So not only are we gonna give you some tips and tricks on what we use, but we're also gonna give you guys some advice on how to build your meals and build your diet up to make it best for you.
We're gonna go inside, we're gonna check out, HEB is known for real good produce. We're gonna check out 3 protein sources that you guys can use, 3 really good carb sources, and 3 healthy fat sources you can use to make sure you can achieve your bodybuilding goals.
All right, rolling in here, guys. I need to pick up proteins, carbs, and fats, obviously. But being in contest prep, getting ready for the Olympia, my stuff is very locked in place. My diet is very laid out and already in a plan. But knowing that and knowing what I need to get, I'm sure Ben has completely different options here. As a coach, as not pushing at the top level, he's probably got some different things. So Ben, hit us with what you got today.
Sure, yeah, I'm gonna grab my basic stuff that I like to eat to stay healthy, stay lean and feel good, but I'm also gonna give you guys some options that I would do my athletes. Obviously, you're not all gonna eat the same things as me, so I'm gonna try and offer you some variety, how to work around traveling, all that kind of good stuff, so you stay on your diet and you can get to your goals. "16 weeks out from the O, what's your go-to proteins on a daily basis right now?"
Yeah, man, so honestly, I have 7 meals a day. 5 of them are meat sources, or whole food sources, if you will. We just implemented eggs back in, but I've had a sensitivity to them for years. So your gut biome changes every 3 to 5 years, and sometimes things that cause a sensitivity can actually go back and not cause a sensitivity when you've taken them out or eliminated them. So we're seeing that eggs aren't causing any sensitivity issues now. They're coming back in. But besides that, it's really chicken or turkey. We just go back and forth between the two. So my sources here, I have the 99-1 turkey. It's just pretty much fat-free turkey. You can just mix it right with your rice and make everything. And then all my other source comes from chicken breasts and chicken tenderloins. So whether I'm cooking the breast down and eating it individually, whether I'm doing the chicken tenderloins, or you guys will see me make these into chicken tenders with a little bit of cornflake as well when I'm this far out and I have a lot of carbs to spare. But yeah, I pretty much stick to these lean protein sources. That's something that we've found works better for my body, is to add the fats in with the avocado and the things like that versus getting my fats from a protein source.
For me, I'll use white fish, eggs or egg whites primarily, and then maybe a Greek yogurt. For my athletes and for guys that do really, really well, then they handle other types of protein sources. I will always lean on using a relatively lean beef, like a 93.7 beef. Super versatile. You can just cook that up in a pan, add some seasoning to it, add it to your meal. And the salmon, you gotta probably cook that a little more carefully than the beef. So a lot of guys, I'll just give them the option. They can substitute the two according to whatever suits their preference. On the road, that's not always possible, and I do find sticking to lean proteins and adding your fats to those, whether it's from you know, an oil, coconut oil, olive oil, dark chocolate, almond butter, avocados, things like that. That's typically going to be a little more convenient when you're on the road. One of my favorite protein sources, and not just from a quality or nutrition standpoint, which it does hold a lot of value in, but just it's a bloody good treat, right? Having some cold Greek yogurt before bed is like dessert. So for myself, I'll do some 0% plain Greek yogurt. The trick I found, this Skyr Icelandic version, it's actually a little thicker and a little creamier. So it's really nice to fill you up before you go to bed. So a little trick for you if you're dieting. If you're bulking, you might want to steer clear of this.
Obviously, going from extremist and training with one of the best bodybuilders in the world in Luke and pushing at its fullest extent to now being a coach, size is not the goal. Being a pro bodybuilder is not the goal, but rather coaching. How has your diet changed? Are you still full bodybuilding tilt, or have you made some modifications in lifestyle?
I for sure made some modifications. I'm actually much more aware of the broader spectrum of my kind of food intake. So for me, the objective is to live healthy, but live long as well, you know, so having a family, things like that. I noticed that my mental acuity, sleep, attention span, you know, when you're bodybuilding and basically living 24/7 to compete, you don't mind being a bit sluggish and mentally slow, and you know, it's all part of, that's the price you pay, right? It's the price you pay to be as big as possible. So I would justify it however I felt, if I felt like it was for the benefit of being huge, right? So it didn't really matter to me.
Do you think perspective changed more in letting go of being a competitor or becoming a dad in that sense? Because I feel like I saw more of a shift in you caring about longevity and stuff as you became a father.
Yeah, for sure. That's something that definitely, when you don't have kids and when you're in the mix of it, you're not thinking that far ahead, you know? And then you have a family, and then you're like, well, okay, I want to be around, I want to feel good for one, so that I can play and engage. Because again, as a bodybuilder, when I'm all out, full tilt bodybuilding, I'm not worried if I'm not the most sociable person, most fun person to be around, because I'm so tired and sluggish. So for one, I want to be able to be present and engage and have my kind of faculties about me be sharp. And then the other thing is I want to be able to do that for decades to come, all the way into when he's my age. So yeah, for sure that changed the perspective and the priorities in life, right?
All right, guys, so it's not a major carbohydrate source, but it's something that's important in my diet, and something that I think you guys can utilize is blueberries. So I do these about twice a day, and not only the benefit of the carbohydrates coming from this and the fructose being able to be stored in your liver. So also, blueberries are great for antioxidants. So this is something I'm gonna have, like I said, in my breakfast, and then I usually do it pre or post workout.
I went bougie though, I go organic.
Yeah.
For me, I'm at a point where I notice a big difference in the quality of food that I buy. So I notice I have a lot of like arthritis. I'm later on in my career, and I know that if I eat a lot of processed foods or foods that are sprayed or low quality foods, my recovery and joints feel a little worse. So I normally spend a little bit extra and get the organic fruits and veg, stuff like that. I try and feed my family the same things. I think that's important. So, but I'm also not trying to pound in 6,000 calories like this monster. So I can be a little more select. Potatoes, not something I use a lot of in my athletes' diets, especially if they're growing, but it's a good one in a diet. If you're looking for a good slow release carbohydrate, potatoes are my go-to. I like these purple red potatoes. There's a bit of a different texture change in there as well.
Potatoes are a great carbohydrate source. They're a little bit micro dense in nutrients versus like rice. So you're gonna get a little bit more electrolytes and things like that from potatoes, as well as, like Ben said, they're a little bit more voluminous. So in prep, oftentimes one of my rice meals will go to potatoes. One, because I'm a country boy that grew up on steak and potatoes my whole life, so potatoes are one of my favorite foods. But two, that volume really helps fill me up as food starts to get lower and I'm not eating 10 cups of rice a day. As that starts to dwindle down, we start to replace things that are less dense with things more dense like these potatoes. So although they're not in my diet right now, this is something I definitely use in prep. All right guys, so one of my other carbohydrate sources is sourdough bread. I personally do not buy it from the grocery store. My girlfriend makes it at home fresh. She sells loaves at the gym, so she makes loaves fresh every 2 days or every day. So I'm very privileged that I get to have that at home and fresh and ready. But this is a great carbohydrate source, and instead of using regular bread, sourdough is just a better option for bodybuilders. One, it's fermented, so it's a little bit more broken down, easier for your stomach to digest, as well as that sourdough, the starter in it has some bacteria that's gonna help your gut biome, help you digest other foods better. So this is a good option, especially there at the end. Again, this is kind of an option like potatoes. As you need more volume in your diet for the hunger purposes, bread is a great option, as well as sometimes rice or potatoes don't go great with a protein source, whereas bread just sometimes toast just hits.
Another thing in this section that I use a lot of is honey. I use it a lot with my athletes. I also use it when I'm carving them up or on high days. Or again, a really good carbohydrate source pre-workout, and even actually before bed. So a lot of times when guys are dieting, sometimes they have trouble sleeping. A lot of times that can be due to being very, very depleted, right? So what I find often, adding 10 to 15 grams of honey to the last meal before bed can oftentimes help replenish that liver glycogen and actually induce a little bit of a better sleep. So a little tip for you. But again, great antimicrobial for the stomach, helps with digestion. Probably one of the main carbohydrate sources you're gonna see most of your bodybuilding favorites eat. I like jasmine rice when I'm at home. Obviously, I'm gonna use this, much more affordable. Great to digest, or easy to digest for almost everybody. I very rarely have anybody that has issues with consuming or digesting rice for their carbohydrates. If you're on the road, in hotel rooms, etc., this is your go-to. If you're on the road, in the truck, in the car, and you don't have anywhere to cook, this is your next best option. And actually, I like this for post-workout. This and a sleeve of this and a shake, a whey shake, is a great post-workout, and then you're on to your next meal. You're not gonna have any issues with bloating, digestion. You're gonna get fast carbohydrates, reloading the muscle, helping recovery.
Going on and expanding into rice products that I also use every day, we have cream of rice here. It's a hot cereal, like oatmeal or one of those things, but really it's just rice blended down. This one is a brown rice. I choose not to use Uncle Ben's. I choose to use Elevate because it's a white rice. They've removed the iron. It's just a little better for bodybuilding. Getting rid of some of that iron as a bigger guy that eats so much protein and things like that is a little bit beneficial for me. But just know that going into it, this is a great product, but there's other products out there that you can use. And then my post-workout is always cereal. That's something I've done for years and years, and boss let me keep that in my plan. I can do cornflakes or a rice-based cereal. We try to keep it very simple. So something like Chex, something like Fruity Pebbles, just a rice-based, something that digests very quickly. I'm gonna do that with a shake right post-workout, be able to digest that very quickly and be able to get another meal in an hour later. But these are the carbohydrate sources we use. Like I said, I mostly stick to rice until right at the end. If I need a little bit more volume, then we'll add something like potatoes or bread. But rice digests well for me and really keeps me at a high energy level, whereas sometimes some of these other carbohydrates either cause digestive distress or kind of bog you down. I like to use the sugar-free jelly every once in a while. It's usually high in fiber, low in carbohydrates, but you're still gonna get that awesome taste out of it. And it's just a little addition that you can add in to give meals some more flavor. We all grew up eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. So it's something you want to add to your cream of rice with the nut butter to get that cream or peanut butter and jelly flavor. You can do the sugar-free one and you're gonna save some calories but still get the flavor. You don't want to abuse anything. We don't want to use anything in complete excess, but if it can be a tool that we can lean on and it can make us better, why not use it?
To get to the size you are and at that level you are at, it takes a hell of a lot of food. I'm wondering, are you experiencing now that you're able to manage your digestion better, which I know you've spoken about? Are you able to eat effectively less calories and achieve the same amount of performance and growth? Or have you noticed any shift in that? Like, what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think my perspective has changed a few times in this, right? So one, it's hard to say on the whole grand scheme of things, because when I was eating massive quantities of food most of my career, I was also working a very laborious job. So I felt like that food was also still probably getting utilized and absorbed and digested. As I started to step away from a laborious job and being more sedentary and giving my full focus towards this, I saw that probably the amount of food I was eating was not being used / digested because of the less mobility, those type of things. And then I would say also, coming from a science background, you can force things as much as you want, but sometimes it just doesn't make sense. So, you know, something that you've seen a big change in me is, like, I used to eat 8 to 10 ounces of protein cooked. And really, I think, yeah, you can get the calories from that and there's no issue with that. We know that that grows muscle, but that's also what distends waste. So finding a good balance between the two, where I could still grow and get all my meals in and still eat the calories I needed, but not feeling that distension / effects of not using the food. Because when I worked construction and I ate that much, I never felt distended and things like that, because I was always moving. The food had somewhere to be used and shuttled to. But as I've become more sedentary, we've pulled my protein down almost in half. Maybe upped my carbohydrates slightly. But in doing so, I've saw digestion get massively better. I think my waist has come in, and I don't think I've impeded growth any in that time, because I've truly put on a lot of tissue.
You know, it's funny, when I was at my peak and I was maybe, you know, up in the 290s, I'm pushing food in the off season. I found a few times, and this is when I was working with John Meadows, we pulled my food back and I got heavier.
Yeah, and got stronger.
Yeah, because my digestion was just so overwhelmed and backed up. So yeah, and something I'm finding with, like, even my athletes now, I try and find their minimum protein intake, rather than, probably early on, I was like, let's see how much protein I can feed them.
If they can eat it, let them
Yeah,
eat
let me
it.
see how much they can handle. Yeah. Now I'm not trying to see how much they can actually, like, digest and handle. I'm not seeing how much they need just to grow in whatever phase they're doing. And that, again, like you said, that then allows more of their calories to come from carbohydrates, which, if they're in a prep and diet and their protein is a little bit lower than it used to be, but carbohydrates are staying higher, now I'm getting energy and I'm getting a more stable metabolism, right? So I do think protein can get very over prioritized. It should be the priority, but I think proteins and carbohydrates should be equal in their in how you're viewing them.
One of my favorite fat sources, and one that I use consistently, is avocado. So we get avocado here, and this is kind of what I go back and forth between. The two fat sources I use mostly is almond butter and avocado. Besides that, we do use some oils every once in a while, but we found that these are what digest best, as well as what I like in my meals. Oftentimes it's misconstrued in bodybuilding that fats are the enemy, when really fats have so many great functions in the body, and really make sure that every function is going well, and is really, really important in cognition and being able to have your brain function the best. So we want to make sure that we're getting fats in it, and we want to make sure that they're healthy and coming from sources like avocados. Another one I talked a lot about is nut butters. I am a big fan of almond butter personally. I have a little bit of a sensitivity to peanuts, so I don't use peanut butter. But almonds are a great one. You can obviously buy these at the store. But my little tip or trick for you is that you can buy a bag of almonds. This costs $7 or $8. You can buy a bag for $7 of almonds that's triple this amount, and just put it in a food processor it down, and you're gonna have the exact same thing. If you want some flavors in there, you guys can add some skinny syrup to it or something like stevia and just sweeten it up. But that's gonna save you some money, as well as it's gonna get rid of a lot of the preservatives and things like that that they put in almond butters. As I've talked about before, in the importance of adding variety to your food, adding flavor so that you make sure you like what you're eating, right? So this is some mushrooms, we got some pre-cut onions, and we have some pre-cut triple bell peppers, so different colors here. And this is just gonna add some flavor to those proteins or those rices, things that we're gonna be eating later on, and honestly just take it to the next level. You know, if your protein is boring, this is an easy way to add to like ground meats and give it a little bit extra flavor, and a cheap way to do so.
My fruit and veg intake is a little lazy, actually. I don't like preparing veg. It's time consuming and I just can't be bothered. But I do like kimchi and I do like sauerkraut. So I typically will add these to my meat-based meals. Again, great probiotics for your stomach, good for digestion. We've got fiber in there, a lot of micronutrients. If you're a bodybuilder, you look after the gut, and then that's the foundation of everything.
All right, guys, something else I utilize in my diet and something that I've been doing recently is a little side salad with one of my meals at the end of the day, just to get some more of those micronutrients in there and some variety to my meal, as well as greens. I'm somebody that's not very good about eating vegetables, so I'm trying to be better. I want to be Mr. Olympia, and to do that, we have to cross every T and dot every I, and some of that comes down to doing the things we don't want to do. So during my training, we've been adding PT in, which we call the vegetables of working out, because it's not very much fun. And in dieting, we got to eat things like salad and stuff like that, which is not very much fun, but it's something that I've been doing. Not just lettuce, but we've added some carrots in there. We've added some other things like celery and things like that to make sure that I'm getting some micronutrients from those tomatoes. And that's really, we've seen a benefit in my gut health as well. All right, Muscle and Strength, that's our grocery haul. Be sure to like, subscribe, and do all that fun YouTube stuff. And we'll see you next time.